They shook hands. Year 2, Chapter 3. Rita Skeeter. Harry Potter meet Rita Skeeter. The blonde witch smiled a brilliant smile at him and gave a slight bow. "Mr. Potter, I am so very honored to meet you," she said in a pleasant voice. "How do you do?" Harry asked politely. Mr. Malfoy looked very pleased. "Shall we adjourn to the sitting room?" he suggested. "We might as well be comfortable." The sitting room was adjacent to the foyer, and Harry tried not to gawk at the expensive furnishings. He sat himself down in a leather chair and studied the reporter. She claimed a seat on the leather sofa and began pulling things from her handbag. A sheaf of parchment was first, followed by a bottle of ink, a quill pen, a board attached to a pillow. She sat at the board on her lap, laid a piece of parchment on it, and readied her quill. "Mr. Potter, you kidnapped on the night of 31st July?" she began. "No," Harry said firmly, I was not kidnapped." "You left your home of your own free will?" she pressed. "Yes." "Were you in the company of Death Eaters?" "Absolutely not. I lived willingly with my friends Elon and Draco Malfoy." Harry gave Miss Skeeter a half smile. "If Death Eaters had shown up at my house, do you honestly think I'd still be alive?" Mr. Skeeter smiled back. Miss Skeeter smiled back at them as they were sharing a secret. "No, I suppose not." "Mr. Potter, why'd you leave your home?" Harry thought very carefully about how much he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it. "Why did I leave Private Drive? How would you feel if you'd grown up not knowing about the wizarding world?" he asked her softly. "If you made strange things happen, you couldn't explain them. If the muggles you lived with hated and feared you. If they tried to stamp the very magic out of you. Would you voluntarily stay there if you had any chance to leave?" The reporter shook her head. "No, I suppose not. Even if Death Eaters had shown up at my door, I still would have gone with them. It was better than staying with the Dursleys. I hate them," Harry said. "I never want to see those muggles again for as long as I live." Miss Skeeter was scribbling furiously, trying to get it all down. She had to get another piece of parchment, and she tapped the quill against her lower lip, evidently thinking carefully about her next question. "Tell me about your escape," she prompted. "There's not much to tell, really," Harry shrugged. "The muggles had guests over for dinner, so I was told to stay in my bedroom, make absolutely no noise, and pretend I didn't exist." "You didn't get dinner?" Miss Skeeter interrupted him. "Not while the muggles were eating." "No," Harry said. "They were having a roast, and I was given some bread and cheese." "Bastards!" Mr. Malfoy burst out. His hand was rapidly clenching and unclenching. He looked very upset. Even Miss Skeeter seemed to be a bit shocked at this revelation. "Interesting," she murmured. She looked at Mr. Malfoy. "Lucius, how far do you want me to push this? This could be very damaging to Dumbledore." Mr. Malfoy smiled beatifically. "Yes, it could, couldn't it? You'll have to ask Harry. I told him that he wouldn't have to answer any question if he didn't want to." Miss Skeeter looked back at Harry. "Was that a typical situation, Harry?" she asked gently. Harry kept his lips sealed. He didn't want to answer that question. Miss Skeeter waited a few seconds for him to respond, and when he didn't, she softly asked him, "What happened next, Harry?" "I've been up in my room for about an hour when I saw a wizard out of the front walk," Harry continued. "I knew it was a wizard because the wind caught his robe and made it flap around a bit." "Was it a black robe?" "Is wearing a black robe a crime now?" Harry snapped. Miss Skeeter shook her head. "No, most definitely not," she replied, "and I'll make a point of that. But was his wizard wearing a black robe?" "Well, yes," Harry said sheepishly. He shouldn't have gotten upset. Miss Skeeter was only trying to help. "He knocked on the front door. When I went to the top of the stairs to see what was going to happen, Uncle Vernon came out of the kitchen and ordered me back to my room. Of course I ignored him. When he opened the door and saw Elon standing there, he got very frightened indeed." I see, Miss Skeeter said. What about the supposed white mask?" she asked him. "That's very important. The whole allegation of Death Eater hinges on it." Harry glanced at Mr. Malfoy, whose lips were pursed speculatively. "No, he wasn't wearing a white mask," he lied. His hood was pulled low over his face, but I recognized his voice. Miss Skeeter made a flourish with her quill and started on a new sheet of parchment. "Now then, did Elon threaten Mr. Dursley in any way?" "No," Harry told her. "He didn't say anything to Uncle Vernon. He just looked up at me and told me to get my things because I was leaving. Uncle Vernon told Elon that he couldn't just come in and take me. First of all, Elon never came into the house," gave Miss Skeeter a pointed look. "Secondly, a Death Eater wouldn't have told me to get my things. Then Elon just told Uncle Vernon not to talk to him. The only other thing he said was that he told Uncle Vernon not to threaten him." "Dursley threatened Elon?" Miss Skeeter perked up a bit. "Interesting. What happened then?" "There's not much more to it, really. We walked down the block, met up with Draco, got on our brooms and left the village." "I'm proud of my sons," Mr. Malfoy interjected. "They helped a fellow wizard in need. It is deplorable that a child should be left to rot in such conditions." Miss Skeeter nodded in agreement. "Well, that appears to cover the facts of the matter." She gave Harry a piercing look. "Is there anything else you would like to tell me, Mr. Potter?" Harry shook his head. He was wondering if perhaps he said too much about Private Drive. He didn't want to remember that place. If he had anything to say about it, he'd never see it again. "Very good, Miss Skeeter," said it brightly. "The article will be in tomorrow's edition." "Excellent, Rita. You have my gratitude," Mr. Malfoy said. Miss Skeeter smirked at him. "I'll think of some way you can pay me back," she laughed. "Would you like to know where the kidnapping report came from?" Mr. Malfoy's eyes lit up. Most assuredly, he breathed. She smirked even wider. Then make sure to read tomorrow's edition. Mr. Malfoy laughed at having been taken in. Ah, Rita, he chuckled. You never change, do you? Not if I can help it, she said, joining in his laughter. This interview here is going to do wonders for me at the paper. Do you know how many journalists are going to be frothing at the mouth when they hear that I got a live interview with the boy who lived? I'm glad to see that everyone wins, Mr. Malfoy said. He was about to speak again, but was interrupted by the bell. Who could that be? I wasn't expecting anyone. That was my photographer, Miss Skeeter said brightly. I thought it would be helpful to run a picture of Harry with the article. It lends credibility. Something you always need to worry about, Rita, Mr. Malfoy said dryly. It's not Bozo, is it? You know I won't have him in the house. The camera of his lets off more smoke than a pepper up potion. Miss Skeeter made a face at him. And we called on Rebecca Jade. You won't have to worry about any of your precious antiques getting damaged by smoke. She got up to answer the door. He wishes Harry, this is Miss Jade. Rebecca Jade was a short witch who barely looked old enough to have left school. She was smartly dressed in deep blue robes and had drawn her brown hair in a short ponytail. She looked very starstruck when she caught sight of the scar on Harry's forehead. Rebecca, Miss Skeeter snapped, pay attention. The photographer shook herself slightly and began taking her camera out of the heavily padded bag she had slung over one shoulder. It was a clunky-looking affair, not nearly as advanced as the camera his cousin Dudley had received for his birthday. Harry sneered at himself. Stop thinking about the Muggles, he thought. If he was so envious of Dudley's camera, he was well off enough to go buy one for himself. Miss Skeeter, you wanted just a photo of Mr. Potter? Rebecca asked Miss Skeeter in a business-like voice. No, I think we should have him together with Mr. Malfoy. Stand up, the both of you, she ordered. Her tone was a bit cavalier, but this is her profession. She most likely knew what she was doing. Harry stood up. Now then, Mr. Malfoy, stand a little closer to Mr. Potter. Slightly behind him, a little closer. Good. Still something missing, though, Rebecca trailed off, looking puzzled. Ah, yes. Mr. Malfoy, put your hand on the shoulder. Perfect. The camera made a bright flash, and Harry blinked for a few seconds at the blinding light. Then the white spots are fading, and he could see normally again. Thank you, Rebecca. That'll be all. I'll see you back in the office. At the office. Miss Skeeter waved her hand, dismissing the photographer. Have that develop by the time I get there. Rebecca Jade nodded as she packed away her camera. She waved her goodbye as she hurried out the door. Mr. Malfoy watched the young woman leave. She's a bit pushy, isn't she? Miss Skeeter nodded. She takes excellent photographs, though. I hear which weekly is trying to lure her away from us. Chances are good they'll probably get her, too. Our loss at the profit. It's been lovely seeing you again, Rita. Can you stay for lunch, Mr. Malfoy strained a knick-knack on the end table? I'd love to, Lucius, but I need to write this article. Give Sissa a kiss for me, would you? Miss Skeeter was gathering up her things and replacing them in the handbag that was far too small to logically contain it all. I will, Mr. Malfoy promised. He walked her to the front door. Don't splint yourself. Never, she assured him. Mr. Potter, it was an honor to meet you. I hope you'll call on me if I ever need a friend in journalism. Harry shook her hand. Thank you for your help, Miss Skeeter. She smiled at him. Call me Rita. With a sudden popping noise, she disappeared. Wow, what was that? Harry exclaimed. A parrotician, Mr. Malfoy said, going back to the sitting room and collapsing into a chair, and bending of time and space to move from one point to another. He poured himself a glass of brown-colored liquid from a crystal decanter and took a large swallow. Brandy, he explained, for the nerves. I'm sorry this has been such an ugly situation, Harry told the older man. Mr. Malfoy waved a hand. It's not your fault, Harry. I told you that. Worry not. It's over now. Rita will take care of everything. I have every faith in her. How do you know her? Harry asked curiously. You seem like your old friends. She was 3 years ahead of me in school, Mr. Malfoy answered him. Though you couldn't tell by looking at her, she never admitted. She was a prefect, a top student, and we were good friends up to the time she left school. We didn't see each other much after that, and she got herself into the reporting business. We renewed our friendship after I finished school, but we still didn't see each other that often. She seems nice, Harry said. Appearances can be deceiving. She can be nice to her friends. She decides to screw you with her quill. Merlin's ghost help you, Mr. Malfoy said. Well, I must get back to my study and start on my paperwork. You and Draco can invite your friends over if you wish. He's no longer confined to his room. Thank you, sir, Harry said. What about Elon? Elon is still in a great deal of trouble, Mr. Malfoy said, frowning. Regardless of how things have turned out, he was still extremely thoughtless. He is grounded for the near future, and you can tell him that too. Yes, sir, Harry said again, and he left the sitting room. It was a beautiful Saturday outside. Draco and Harry tended to waste no time in getting out into the fresh air. Elon hadn't reacted too well to the news that Draco was no longer grounded, but he gradually took the greater part of the responsibility for the mess that Harry's rescue had caused. He stayed in his room writing a letter while Harry and Draco made fireplace calls to their friends. The experience of sticking his head into a roaring fireplace is definitely one that Harry didn't care to try just now. He insisted that Draco do it the first time. When the blonde-haired boy nonchalantly tossed a pinch of what he called blue powder, a gray, glittering, greasy substance, into the fire, it turned emerald green, and Draco knelt down and spoke into the flames. Villa Davis stuck his hand into the fire. Good morning, Jamie, Harry heard him say. Is Tracy around anywhere? There was a short pause. Tracy, good news. Harry's here with us at the manor. No, the paper was lying. I don't know where that report came from. Father's looking into it. Look, if you want to come over, you can discuss it with him. Very good, I'll see you soon. As Draco removed his head from the fire, Harry noticed they had a light dusting of soot and ash all over. You're looking a little grubby, he observed slyly. Draco looked down at himself, bothered. He said, worst part about flu, I'd say. You think they can clean it up a bit. Anyway, Tracy's gonna tell her parents where she's going, and should be here. Harry, Tracy shrieked as she tumbled out of the fireplace. Harry opened his arms to hug his friend, but was instead tackled. He staggered trying not to fall down. He was blinded by Tracy's mane of blonde hair. His ribs groaned as he squeezed him around the middle. Let off him, Tracy, Draco laughed. You just found out that he's alive and well. Don't send him to the hospital. Tracy blew Draco a raspberry. Harry, when we saw the paper this morning, we flipped. You should have seen Father's reaction, Draco muttered. Look, before we start explaining, maybe we should get the others here. Tracy pouted, but Draco could not be swayed. There's no need for Harry to have repeated himself a bunch of times. So Draco made fireplace calls by the Bulstrode estate, Castleton Knot, Parkinson Manor, Greengrass Meadows, Pike Hollow, Crab's Home, and Chadu de Goyle's home. One by one, Harry's friends all arrived. They were all ecstatic to see him, pale and hearty. Harry related what had happened to him over the course of this very strange holiday. He told about not getting any letters, the unexpected rescue from Private Drive, and the firestorm that had resulted. Theo now leaned back in his chair, scratching his chin. Who was it who sounded the alarm? That's what I wonder, he said. I think Father gave us the answer to breakfast, Draco said. Dumbledore. He's been spying on me, Harry growled, not pleased with his revelation. He's been spying on me and he let the Muggles treat me worse than a dog. That's disgusting, Pansy Parkinson said vehemently. What sort of a man could possibly let things go on, knowing you were rotting away in that place? How can he sleep at night? He's someone who doesn't care about Slytherins, Theo said as if it were plainer than day. Why should it matter if a Slytherin student is treated horribly at home? We're all doomed to become Death Eaters anyway, right? So much the better if some of us die while young. Theo's sarcasm was raw and biting. I certainly won't be a Death Eater, Harry said flatly. He looked around at his friends. Neither will any of you. There was no argument in that tone of voice. Tracy squeezed his hand. Oh, Harry, how can you even think that any of us will join you-know-who? You're our friend, and we died before he turned on you. That's right, Millie Bulstrode chimed in. Besides, why would we side up with him when you've already defeated him twice before? We're on your side, Harry. Seeing his friends nod their heads and murmur their assent to Millie's words made Harry feel warm and fuzzy inside. He was about to say something emotional when everyone turned at the sound of Goyle's stomach growling. Goyle turned a little bit red. Hey, Draco, it's getting close to lunchtime. Is there any food around here? Draco sighed. Of course there's food around here, you fathead. Hey, my head is not fat, Goyle said, meandering towards the dining room. Harry laughed. He missed that joke. He missed his friends. He got to his feet and fell in step with Millie and Tracy, who linked her arm with his. That was another thing he'd missed, the good sort of physical contact. After lunch, the 9 young Slytherins hurried out into the fresh summer air. Quidditch was on Harry's mind. He reveled in being able to mount his Nimbus 2000 and rocket through the sky. He chased his inch all over the place, trying to make up in one afternoon what he missed in 1 month of imprisonment with the Muggles. His friends played 4-person teams to let him fly free, knowing he needed the release. Harry saw Elon sitting on his balcony at one point watching the game. He was surprised to see Jamie Davis sitting there as well. The couple was holding hands and talking. Once Harry thought he saw them snogging, but the snitch twisted away from him and he had to focus on flying. They played until the sun began to sink in the sky. It was the first time Harry had been able to play with his friends when they were all riding on their own brooms and they were all excellent flyers. Draco gave him a bit of a contest when he played as Seeker for the other team, but his Common 260 was really no match for Harry's Nimbus. As the day faded away, the friends parted company. Hugging and shaking hands, they all promised to play together on the morrow. Jamie Davis, who was snuck over despite Elon being grounded, departed as well, and she and Elon had emotional parting that had prompted much giggling from the younger boys and girls. Shortly following the mass exodus from Malfoy Manor, dinner was served. Harry, Draco, and Elon all filed into the dining room and took seats. Mr. Malfoy strode with a private sort of smile on his face. It was a look that said, I know something you don't know. Good evening, Malfoy, he said, taking a seat at the head of the table. He snapped his fingers and Hal himself began running into the room, carrying trays of food. It smelled heavenly. We wish to see him in a better mood, Mrs. Malfoy commented, taking a sip from her wine glass. I am indeed, my love. Mr. Malfoy clanked his wine glass against hers. Thanks to Harry, all this Death Eater nonsense will be blown over by the middle of the next week. Rita's article should quiet even the most suspicious gossips. You realize it's going to be in the Sunday edition. The Sunday has doubled the circulation of the Daily, contributed around a mouthful of roast. Chew your food, Mrs. Malfoy admonished him. Mr. Malfoy was nodding. Quite right, Draco. Between Harry's wonderful interview and my very productive meeting with Cornelius Fudge and a long talk with an old friend of mine, I do believe everything is going to work out perfectly. Something's up, Draco whispered to Elon. He's never this happy. Now unless he's about to spring a nasty surprise, Elon muttered back. Mr. Malfoy was pleasant all throughout dinner. He asked about the Quidditch games they played, talked about Slytherin's team's prospects for the upcoming school year, and he was even civil to Elon. Considering the way they'd blown up at breakfast, this is startling to Harry. Even Draco was unnerved by how normal things seemed to be. It was nearly time for the pudding to be served, but the meal was interrupted by the arrival of several post owls. Harry was happy to see that one was bearing his letter from Hogwarts. Whenever a strange problem had developed with the receipt of the post, it didn't affect his note from school. He tore it open immediately. Inside was a form letter instructing him to catch the Hogwarts Express from King's Cross Station on the 1st of September. Included with the letter was a list of new books Harry would need for the coming year. Second-year students will require The Staring Book of Spells Grade 2 by Meredith Gottschalk, Break with the Banshee by Gilderoy Lockhart, Gadding with Gulls by Gilderoy Lockhart, Holidays with Hags by Gilderoy Lockhart, Travel with Trolls by Gilderoy Lockhart, Voyages with Vampires by Gilderoy Lockhart, Wandering with Werewolves by Gilderoy Lockhart, Year with the Yeti by Gilderoy Lockhart. Okay, so that's part 1 of Daisha Can's Year 2, Chapter 3. Check everybody. Another video for my Storytime channel.